First things first, I lied in my last video. I'm not going to reality games this time, but maybe sometime soon. Second, this video was filmed before the new ban list was legal, and as many of you know, the most recent ban list took away a couple of our boys. The tournament I played today was a 16-player sneak peek. We played 4 rounds, and top 4 would win a mat, promo card, and a couple packs. I really had my eyes set on that mat, so let's see how I did.
Alright, here we go. Good luck to you.
Round 1 begins, and I win the dice roll. We open Turquoise Warbler, and Bird Call gets us to the rest of our combo. My opponent doesn't seem to have any hand traps, but while I was comboing, I searched a Bird Call with the intention of adding a Barrel Canary to finish off our board with a Ensemble Robin, but I forgot that I used Bird Call at the start of the turn. So we end on our board of Simorgh plus Apex Avian and a Draco Future, just without the Robin. My opponent starts his turn with a Numeron Wall, which I attempt to negate with Draco Future, but he responds to the Forbidden Droplets, negating my Draco Future and Apex Avian. He gets his Numeron network, then activates Numeron Calling from hand, summoning the 4 gates. At the start of battle phase, I activate Almirage, just to make sure he doesn't have enough damage to OTK me. I have a face down Imperm that I considered using, but I decided to hold it until his next turn because I knew I wouldn't die, and I needed to make sure I could break whatever he ended on. In his main phase 2, he puts all his monsters into a 4-material Appaloosa, but at the start of my next turn, I Imperm the Appaloosa, taking away all its negates. After that, I summon Nerval to make a Doom Eagle access code play, search a Fractal, then use Kuras from my hand to summon Shurag for lethal, wrapping up game 1. Game 2, and my opponent makes me go first, but my hand is considerably worse. Our combo starts with a Turquoise Warbler summoning Sapphire Swallow. This means we have to combo differently to end on a strong board to not get OTK'd. I end on an Apex Avian and a 2-material Robin, but I have a Forbidden Chalice and an Imperm set as extra interruption. He starts his turn with a Lava Golem and a Called by the Grave to stop my Robin from adding back a follow-up play, and if that wasn't enough, he has a Harpy's Feather Duster for my back row. He activates Lightning Storm to clear my monsters, but I chain Almirage in order to protect my Simorgh. 3 board breakers does seem like a lot in an opening hand though, so I start to wonder if he actually has a play. Sure enough, he sets 1 card and passes the turn, and Simorgh gets us to a Nerval in the end phase, but he eats a Forbidden Droplets at the start of my next turn, so I'll have to get creative in order to assemble lethal. I normal summon a Barrel Canary and make Recital Starling to boost my Simorgh's attack points and search combo pieces, but when my opponent sees the Recital, he admits defeat, leaving me with the W for round 1. Round 2 has a similar start. I win the dice roll and go uninterrupted through my combo, but my opponent on Sword Soul drops the Forbidden Droplets to get rid of my interaction and starts to disassemble my board. He ends up clearing my entire setup and building enough damage to OTK me, so I lose game 1 pretty quickly. Game 2, I start off with a Fractal to load up my graveyard and search for a Karos, but my normal summon Nerval eats a Gamma. I use the Karos to summon a Simorgh, set 2, and try to get out on Apex Avian, but Simorgh gets hit by an Ash Blossom. My opponent starts his turn with a Sword Soul Emergence, to which I chain my Imperial Order. Then he summons Taie and banishes the Emergence to summon a token. I try to Chalice the Taie, but I locked myself out because of the Imperial Order. From there, he starts clearing my board. Baxia shuffles my back row and Karos into the deck so I don't have a follow-up. Then he makes Chi-Jiao and Baronne de Fleur to make sure any follow-up I do have is negated. Staring down 2 negates, I scoop up my cards and admit defeat. So being X1 after round 2 is pretty scary, but it is still possible for me to top. The person I lost to is actually a pretty good player, so if he doesn't drop any games and I win the rest of mine, then tiebreakers make it possible for me to sneak into top 4. But to make sure I do well in my next 2 games, I need to pull up my secret weapon, royalty-free music.
Obviously I got my Ignition deck on my...
With the power of not spending money on music coursing through my veins, I win my 3rd dice roll and get to go first. I open Turquoise Warbler and Bird Call gets me to Cobalt Sparrow, but he drops an Impermanence on my Ferrijit, cutting off my access to Simorgh. But I can still end on a Draco Future and a 4-material Robin. My opponent starts his turn with a special summon of Ashuna, but when he summons Monk, I bounce it back with Robin. He summons Otara, then sets 2 cards and passes back to me. At the start of my turn, I banish all 4 monsters in my graveyard to summon a Shureg, then banish his face down Ice Dragon's Prison. I put 3 monsters into an access code, who cleans up the rest of his board, and I swing in for lethal. Game 2, my opponent chooses to go first and starts his turn with a normal summon of Incredible Ecclesia. I have an imperm, but he plays in such a way that I can't find a good place to use it until he summons Baxia and activates the effect to summon from graveyard. Apparently that was the monster to hit, because after that he sets 2 cards and passes back to me. In my standby phase, he flips an Imperial Order, which turns off the bird call in my hand. I start my turn by normal summoning a Cobalt Sparrow and using Sapphire Swallow to summon another one. A search for Nerval gets me to my Tri-Brigades, and I link 2 of the birds into Ferigi, then use the Ferigi and my last bird to summon into Simorgh. Kuros in hand pitching Nerval gets me a search for Fractal, and Kuros summons Doomeagle, which is linked off into Access Code. I use Access Code to clear the Imperial Order and the Baxia, and now that I can use spells again, I bird call into a Barrel Canary, which lets me summon an Assembled Nightingale and swing in for game. But I forgot about the Water Tenyi that he dumped on his first turn, which lets him summon back his Monk and make it so I'm just barely missing lethal. So in my main phase 2, I make a 5 material Zeus and summon an Apex Avian in the end phase. On his next turn, my opponent activates Heavenly Dragon Circle in Grave, which prompts a negate from Apex Avian. He then summons a Vishuddha from hand, which eats my first Zeus activation, but he's out of cards in hand and passes back to me, where I summon Recital Starling to boost up my Zeus and punch for lethal. Final round, and this one is for all the marbles. We're up 1 game because I forgot to hit the record button, but I went first, set up, he couldn't break it. Game 2. So this game he's going first and starts with a Rhoda for Torn Scales. He goes through his combo and ends on a 3 material Appaloosa and 3 back row. I sided in red reboot this game and I drew it for my opening hand. So I just had to play through this Appaloosa. Definitely possible with our hand. However, it was late at night and I'd been playing for hours, so I was bound to make some misplays. I start with a special summon of Warbler and use its effect to bait 1 Appaloosa negate. I normal summon a Barrel Canary and link into Ferigi, using its effect, but he chains Fogblade instead of Appaloosa, so I'm able to use red reboot. Ferigi summons a Kit from hand, and here he's nervous about using another Appaloosa negate because Ferigi can just destroy it in battle if he does, so I'm able to use Kit to summon double Dragon Lords and force out the Appaloosa interruption that way. But here's where the first misplay happens. I forget to use Kit's effect after I send to the graveyard with double Dragon Lords, and if I didn't forget that, I could have just dumped Nerval and searched a Karos to clean up with Doomeagle access code. Instead, I link Ferigi and double Dragon Lords into access code, and use a Barrel Canary to summon Assembled Nightingale. After punching for damage, I make a 4 material Zeus in my main phase 2, and use 1 activation to clear his field. But unfortunately for me, that little misplay cost me game 2, because 1 Zeus is not enough to stop a full Phantom Knight follow-up play. So eventually, he's able to bait out the Zeus and get to a position where he can start link spamming, and I admit defeat after that. Game 3, last game of the night. I start with the Fractal to load up the graveyard and search a Karos. I special summon the Karos, pitching a Wagtail, and Karos banishes 3 to summon a Simorgh. I use Barrel Canary in my hand to start the bird combos, summoning the Wagtail I dumped, gets me a bird call, and I summon a Recital Starling. After that, I use the bird call to search a Sapphire Swallow, and use the Sapphire Swallow to summon a 3 material Robin. I set 2 back row, and in the end phase, Simorgh gets me an Apex Avian. My opponent starts his turn with the Dark Ruler No More, negating all of my monsters, then summons a Tour Guide, which promptly eats an Imperm. But then he activates Fusion Destiny, summoning DPE. This is actually good for me, because it means that he'll be able to clear some of my monsters, but in exchange he won't be able to shut me out of the game with his Phantom Knight combo. He goes to the battle phase and destroys everything except for my Apex Avian, and this is where the big misplay happens this game. For some unknown reason, I grab back Sapphire Swallow instead of Barrel Canary when Robin gets destroyed, leaving me without a good follow-up. But I top deck DD Crow, which outs DPE in the draw phase because he can't summon himself back when he's banished. So now I just have to assemble lethal against a single Tour Guide and a Celestial on field. Banish 3 for a Doomeagle, and link into Access Code. Access Code pops the Celestial, but I don't have any more links to fuel him. This is where the next big misplay happens. I didn't see the play here until the next turn, but I could have normal summoned the Sapphire Swallow in my hand, linked into Almirage, and used that to destroy the Tour Guide. Instead, I went to battle phase and swung for 7,000 damage, barely missing lethal, and passing on an Access Code, Almirage, and an Apex Avian. He starts his turn with a Torn Scales and summons Silent Boots. He used Celestial's effect in Grave, but I let it go through, because I was saving my negate for Break Sword's effect to summon. Turns out that was the only good play I made this game, because he doesn't draw anything good. He ends up making Break Sword and tries to pop my Apex Avion, which I protect with Almirage, and negate his effect in Graveyard. He sets one and passes back to me, and at the start of my main phase, I pop his back row and use a top-decked Bird Call to search a Barrel Canary, summoning an Assembled Nightingale and poking directly for lethal. Well, it was certainly a stressful night, especially that round 4 with all those misplays, but as you can see, we did it. We topped. Tiebreakers ended up going in our favor quite well. The person we lost to got 2nd place. I thought I wasn't going to make top 4, but by some miracle I did. We made 3rd. And as for our spoils, we have, of course, the mat and the promo Libromancer Geek Boy. See if it focuses. No, I guess not. And we also got this pretty cool 3rd place trophy. So, yeah. I think that's a pretty great pull from our day at Locals. And, you know, it's a little unfortunate that the birds are going to go bye-bye, but next time I'm cooking up a little something special. So, you'll just have to wait and see. Thanks for watching.